Well, hey, peepers. It's me again, Margaret. Yeah, it's me again. Making me some coffee. Oh, enjoying this beautiful morning. Gonna sneeze. Ooh, feel like I gotta sneeze anyway. That sun's bright this morning. Oh, it feels good though. Did you hear all that quietness? I love it. It's a way to soothe the mind and the soul. I was thinking this morning, me and the boys went for a walk around the yard, walk around the property next door. We had a good morning, plundering and looking around, dreaming about what needs to be done and what's got to be done, and letting God just come in, come in and walk with me, put my soul and my mind at ease. And we were talking about judgment. My whole life I've always been told it's not our place to judge. And so that little conversation come up with God, Are we supposed to judge? Why? Why aren't we supposed to judge? How come we're not allowed to judge others? And God said, you are. And I went, okay, I believe you. You're God, So explain, why do they tell us we're not allowed to judge? He said it was false teaching. And I was like, but only Christ is allowed to judge. He says, very true. I said, Christ is allowed to judge everything in heaven and in earth. You gave him full authority for that. He said, yes, I did. I said, but we're told we're not allowed to judge, and you're telling me that I am. But there's only one judge. He said, mm-hmm. I said, that contradicts each other. He says, no, it doesn't. So I'm in a little confusion, right? And I'm like, is this God that I'm talking to? And he said, yes. I'm like, God is not confusion. He said, no. I said, well, I'm feeling confused. He said, because you're fighting with your flesh. He said, you're fighting with what you've been taught your whole life versus what's truth. So I stopped, right? And I'm like, well, explain. Help me understand. He said, humankind like to use the words choice, discernment. I was like, okay. He said, and many other little words. And they all mean judge. But they use those words to trick you into thinking you're not judging. But you are. And I'm like, he said, think about it. What is a choice? I said, well, you're picking the direction you want. He said, mm-hmm. What are you doing? You're judging. You're judging by what you see, and you're making a choice. What does a judge do? He takes the facts. He takes the tools in front of him. all the information and he makes a decision. I give you choice. I give you what you call discernment, the ability to know the difference between right and wrong, and the direction you want to go and the direction you don't want to go. That is a judgment. He said, just because the words are colored in pretty colors and soft ones doesn't mean it's not judgment. He said, you have the choice to judge. You're given the choice to judge. I said they will be known by their fruit. And, the power of him is overwhelming, and I'm like, correct. He said, my children will be known by their fruit. I give you the power to judge. He said, but there's a catch. I'm like, okay. He says, this is why they changed the word judgment into something else to make it not sound so authoritative. I was like, okay. He says, hold on, y'all. I'm thinking. He said, in your scriptures, judge not, lest you be judged. I'm like, okay. I was having to remember what he said, and he was talking to me at the same time. I kind of went into I want to call it a silent zone. So judge not, lest you be judged. And I was like, so what does that really mean? Because people say you're not supposed to judge. He says, you will be judged by the same measure of judgment you give others. He said, if you judge others wrongly, you will be judged by that same measure. He said, that's why you must have self-control. So the example is, if I go out here and judge people by how they look, by how they behave, and what they do, then in return, that judgment is going to be, I'm going to be measured by that same judgment by others. So if I say that if a person does something wrong, they need to be punished for this. Remember, the commandments say, if you break the least of these, it is as if you had did the most. So if I'm judging you and giving in my mind and through my mouth, or even in my mind, because he says, even if you think it, it's as if you've done it. And I make a judgment that someone should be punished, and whatever the severity is, then when I break a commandment, when I do something that is not according to God, and it's more according to the world, then I will be judged with the same level of judgment as I did for someone else. Not just through people, but when it comes my time to go before God. Did I give lenience? Did I give love? Did I give kindness? Did I make that judgment out of anger, hasty, deceit or spite? So whatever level of judgment that I do to others, or you do to others, because I assume this is straight across the board, we will be judged by that same level that we used from our heart. That's what that means. Doesn't mean you don't have a right to judge. You do. You just must understand the warning of it. You judge someone, you will be judged in that same manner. Not just by human beings, but by God, or by the Lord, because Christ is judge. He has full authority of judge, to judge heaven and earth. So a lot of people always say, well, God will judge you and Jesus is the intercessor. No, sorry. That's not scriptural. Scripture says that Jesus has full authority over judgment. He is the judge. So all things have heaven and earth. So the only intercession he does is the understanding when he walked this earth how hard it is. But he's going to look in your heart, just as he did the Pharisees. He knew they stirred in their heart to deceive him. You know, just as Jesus did anyone else, he looked into the heart. The Lord will look into your heart and make a judgment on everything that you've done in your life. And if you judged others from your heart in a very bitter way, then you too will be judged in the same level of judgment you gave others. I hope that makes sense to anybody, because that helped me understand, you know, I do have a right to judge others. But it's how I judge them depends on how I get judged. So careful when you judge other people. You have a choice. You can choose to use that judgment for anger, for hate, bitterness, or you can use that judgment for love, for kindness, for assistance. You know, instead of looking down on them and being bitter and nasty, help them. Be kind to them. Pray for them. Ask God to direct them. You know, our prayers are the keys that protect, that opens the door of the armory to protect people we cover in prayer. Yes, they have a choice. They can judge. They can judge their path, what direction they want to go, what spirit they want to keep. But your prayer is still there. For a perfect stranger, your prayer is there. That tells what's in your heart. When you pray for someone else you don't even know, that's why he says it's easy to do for those you love and those that are around you. But the real test is what you do with people you don't know, people who are around you. That's the real test. That's the real test. What do you do with people around you? Are you kind? Are you bitter? Do you look down on them? Do you help them get jobs? Do you help them find homes? You don't even know them. Do you open up? I don't know, let's say you have an apartment complex and you have a few houses that are for rent, or you have a few apartments that are for rent, and you want $1,600 and $2,200 for each apartment, but some people are like, I don't have a job that pays me that much, you know, can you come down to like $900? You know, I'm trying. I'm trying, but now I'm homeless because I can't afford. Everything's so high. Do you open it up and say, okay, $900 a month, and as things progress, if your money situation changes and gets higher, then we'll redo the lease. But we'll do the lease for 1 year, do the lease for 6 months, and then they give you a paycheck stub to let you see if their money has changed. And if it hasn't, then you continue with the same lease. I mean, have you helped somebody today? Have you helped people you don't know? It's easy to say, oh, that's my aunt, or oh, that's my cousin, or oh, that's my niece, or that's my grandchild, or my son needs a place to live. What about people who don't have someone who has things, who needs a hand up? There was a saying, one of the, there was a movie star or something, and he said he turned around and turned his back to everybody, and he says, I climbed that ladder, I got to the top. He said, but it was put on my heart that I needed to turn around and grab the hand of somebody I didn't even know and give them a hand up. He said, so I gave them a job. They weren't qualified, but they were the best employee I had because they were thankful. Help somebody. Make a judgment. Let God guide you. Don't use the word discern. Don't use the word, a choice. I made a choice. No, I made a judgment. Don't sugarcoat it. It is what it is. You're making a choice. You're discerning. You're making a judgment about your life and the life of other people. And when you see someone that irks you or irritates you, what's in your heart? What are you thinking? Is it good stuff? Is it bad stuff? Maybe that's the person you need to give a hand up. Maybe that'll be your best employee ever. Your best renter. Simply because they're grateful. But it's your choice. It's your judgment. Your rules. That person's homeless. You don't know whether they're going to keep your house clean or not. You don't know what they're going to do. So, monthly inspections. Throw them in there. Make them do like you need them to do. It's your property. Monthly inspections, and the house will be inspected. That'll be your choice. Your judgment. Protect what's yours. But at the same time, give somebody a chance. And if you see that they're not taking care of it, tell them, this is it. I've had somebody tell me that, oh, you can rent it by the week. I was like, okay, rent it by the week. You can rent it bi-weekly. Okay, that's interesting. Well, why would you do that? Well, it's a judgment. So that if you're renting by the week, that means you can throw them out. If they're not keeping your house clean, they're not doing what they're supposed to do, you can let them go. And there's no bond, there's no, anything there. Oh, it's interesting. It's the same way with a job, right? You have 30 days, and if you don't meet the standards, they can let you go. Interesting. Give somebody a chance. Don't judge them so harshly, because what you judge others by, you will be judged by. Not just by other people, but by Jesus himself. Choices are judgment. You are using your inner thoughts to know whether or not this is good for you or bad for you. That is a judgment. God gives us the ability to judge. That's a gift. And it depends on what you use that gift for, good or bad. But the world likes to sugarcoat it and tell you you're not supposed to judge. It's not your place. Yes, it is. I heard it from the mouth of the one who talks to me. You do. And the scriptures say you do. Because he tells you it's your choice. What is choice? It's a judgment. You can choose to go to school. You can choose to learn a trade. You can choose to live on the street. Or you can choose the avenue that's open to you. Like, I know an individual who chose to leave everything she knew. And now she lives on the streets. Day to day. Not knowing where her next meal's coming from. Not knowing. And it's like, why would you choose that? Well, the choice was chosen in desperation. But God has given her an opening. But she chooses not to take that opening because she refuses to leave a young man who refuses to work. He's supposedly on disability, but he's movable. He can move his hands, his arms. He can do all kinds of things. So he can work. He just chooses, my husband would call it, to be lazy. And because she doesn't want to leave him on the streets because he don't want to work, she refuses to go live with a person who really needs somebody there with them. An only family member who's up in age, who would lovingly take care of her and her newborn baby. But instead she prefers to live on the street with a newborn baby in a vehicle with a young man who should be a man, but instead he's on disability for whatever reason it may be. That was a choice she made. She has an opening. Remember, when you're put in situations and you make a choice, and that choice winds up to be not a very good choice, there is always a door. And it may not be the door you want, but it is a door that will give you safety. You just got to choose it. You've got to make that judgment. Do you stay on the streets, wondering where your next meal is going to come from with a baby? Or do you go live with someone who needs somebody? Simply because they say your boy can't come with you. He could go live with his family. I don't want no man in my house. You know, it's an older person. These two aren't married. But she refuses because she don't want to leave him without a vehicle, without a way to get around, without So it's like a catch-22, right? I care about this person. I don't want them on the streets, but I got a baby to think about. But she's not looking at those things. She's just, I'm going to keep what I got, But God's given you an avenue, but you refuse to take it because of your pride or your selfish reasonings. There's a light. She just won't walk to it. Because she could literally go do what she's got to do, and that would make him get up off his hiney butts and quit depending on her. Because she's calling everybody. I need money for this. I need money for that. I need this. I need that. The baby needs diapers. The baby needs formula. I mean, and people are like, get. You have a place. You just refuse to go. It's like listen. See how your choice can really just create a massive problem in your life? It was a bad choice what she did. To her, it was like, oh, I'm free at last. But free to do what? Struggle? And still keep calling that same person? Still bumming money? Still depending on everybody else to pay your phone, your vehicle insurance, while you're living on the street behind buildings and stuff with a newborn baby and a young man who refuses to work because, well, his disability would, they wouldn't give him a free ride. And to me, I mean, I don't know what his disability is, but if you're able to move your arms and hands and lift and walk and do things, then you're capable, able-bodied to work. You're able to work. It's beyond me why people don't want to work. I don't understand it. I really don't. Oop, spilled my stuff. But remember, we all have a choice. We all have the ability to discern good from bad, right from wrong, a good situation, a bad situation, discern whether or not we want to trust somebody or we don't want to trust somebody, discern whether, we want to help somebody in their time of need or whether we don't. And what we do is our own business. And that's one thing that the Lord plainly meant when he said, what we do, don't toot your horn ahead of you. Don't tell people what you've done. Because what you do in secret, he will openly reward. But don't do it for the reward because he knows what's in your heart. Do it because you truly feel for that person. You truly feel for that situation. Make a choice. It's like my sister-in-law's and us. We were sitting on her porch last night, and this very young couple with a young child pulled up into a house across the street, and she was screaming, she was cussing, she was ranting. He gets out of the vehicle and he slams the door, and she goes over toward his car, and she gets out of her car and she's ranting at him and screaming at him. We at this point didn't even know there was a baby in the car. She goes over to his passenger side of his car. He's in the car, and she starts punching the window, starts slamming her body against it. The mother comes out. She's yelling, "What's going on? Quit that. You're going to hurt yourself." And she's just like she's on something. It literally seemed like she needed a straitjacket, to be honest. he was quiet. He didn't say anything other than, explaining. He's trying to, in a low tone, to explain to her he doesn't understand why she's angry at him. And then she's just, Rah! So then the mom and all, they get the baby out of, she gets the screaming lady gets the baby out of the car, turns around and sees us and goes, "Oh, hey, don't worry about it. We're all right," and we're just, and she's just screaming and she's cussing at him and blah, blah, blah. So the mom takes the child and she leaves. She goes into the house screaming and screaming. I mean, literally screaming like somebody who's got Tourette's or something. Ah, ah. You could hear, the whole neighbor could hear her inside the house. And so he starts up the car. He's leaving. She told him to leave. It was over, blah, blah, blah. And the mom's coming back and says, "Here, tell Daddy bye." And so the youngin', he held the youngin' for a moment, and he got back in the car. And he started that car up. She come running out of that house. She got in front of his car and just started slamming her hands on the car and kicking it, and put her hands on it and then started giving him the middle finger and everything else. What kind of reaction? That was not an adult. That was demonic. That was somebody who had no control over themselves. And I looked at my sister-in-laws. I said, she has to be on something. Has to be. That was a judgment that I used. There's no way a rational person would behave in such a way. Then he turned the car off because he just sat there in the car. And then finally he got out of the car and he goes, "What do you want from me?" And she's screaming and cussing at him and ranting. And the mom and the sister's like, stop, you're going to hurt yourself. She's pounding on the hood of his car. She's trying to damage it and then she gets away from the mom and him. She goes back in the house. You can hear her screaming and ranting. So the mom and him leave, and take the child in the house. And so he gets back in the car and he starts it up to go again. And she's screaming in the house. It sounds like, I don't know, pure all hell broke loose in that house. And you could hear her screaming, "No, don't, da, da, da," And we're just sitting there listening. Then all of a sudden, this window, this blind and curtain comes up, and he starts the car. He's about to leave. And she started screaming, "No, baby, don't leave me, baby, don't leave me." And she's pounding on this window to the point that she shatters the window with her hand and her arm. And I'm like, oh my word. Something had to be, well, someone had called 911 already, but my sister-in-law made a choice. She made a judgment, and she called the 911, and they said they had already had a call, and she said that she was very concerned because, it was a domestic dispute, and there was a child that was there. And she was calling just for the child to make sure that, things went okay. So I guess 10 minutes went by. And the police showed up. Well, police got her outside. She wasn't screaming no more. She was on her best behavior. They looked at her arm. They called an ambulance. And by the time I had left, because they had the roads blocked off, so I was just sitting there. Finally, I was able to leave. The police were on the inside, and so was the EMTs. So I felt so sorry for that young man, and so sorry for her. My heart just felt for them. I was, praying and asking God for, guidance with them, and for her to get help. And excuse me. Hopefully that baby wasn't, permanently damaged by this, what he's seen. There's all kinds of things out there. What's in your heart about them? Some people would watch that and be totally entertained. Me, I was somewhat, I guess what you'd call, in constant prayer in my mind about it, because it wasn't entertainment. It wasn't entertainment. It was two people in a desperate, what I want to say, relationship, one trying to understand what was going on, and the other one acting as though their world had crumbled beneath them. And the only way they knew to react was by screaming. Both are at fault. That's my judgment. It takes two to create such an environment. Was he innocent? Surely not. Was she? Surely not. Neither one. Neither one can walk away from that relationship saying, I'm not the blame. They both are at fault. And the one that gets hurt the worst is that little child that had to watch his mommy behave in such a way that was not being an adult. So see, that is a judgment. That's not just discernment. That's not just knowing right from wrong. That's a judgment, and I made it. I judged those two people according to what I seen, the facts that were in front of me. I didn't pick one side over the other. And we do that daily. We do that daily. We make judgments in our life. We make judgments in the lives of others. If you're a mother, you judge whether or not your child should or should not do something. If you're a father, the same way. If you're the husband of a household, you have a wife, you make judgments. It's not just decisions. It's not just discerning. It's not just a choice. It's a judgment. You used what was in front of you, the facts that were presented, and you made a judgment. So for anyone to say that we are not allowed to judge, they're using false doctrine. We're given that choice. And what you choose to do with that choice, that's your own business. Because that's between you and your God. That's what I learned this morning. That's what I learned this morning. So just remember, when they say you are not allowed to judge, judge not lest you be judged. There's a reason that it says that. Because what you judge others by you yourself shall be judged in that same level of judgment. That's why they say it. So you just have to understand that if you judge someone, you yourself in return will be judged in that same way. But the pretty words are still judgment. You're still given a choice. So just remember that. You're allowed to judge. He said, you will know my children by their fruit. So guess what? You're going to judge. You're going to see how others behave and know whether or not they are of God or not. Some people say they are. They love Christ. They love God. They love this. They do that. But when you watch them, they act like anybody else. See, God's children are supposed to hold themselves to a higher standard because they're of a different breed, so to speak. Kind of like a kingdom, he just said. Yeah. You have a castle and you have a family that live in that castle. Then you have the commoners. You're expected to behave in a certain way and a certain manner. And you're given a certain respect because of who you are. But if you act like the commoners, then you are a commoner. He said that was an earthly example. He said no one is better than anyone else. But his children hold themselves to a higher standard, where others have no control over their actions, their creature, their character. His children do. You will know his children by their fruit. Anyway, I hope you got something out of this. This is what I learned today. Hopefully I keep remembering it, because sometimes I forget things and I'll have to watch my video all over again and go, wow, where did that come from? I know where it come from. It come from Almighty. It's like, I forgot about that. You know, I forgot. And I love these videos that I make because I can go back and listen to them too and still keep it, you know, real, you know, where God says this. So I hope y'all get something out of it. I hope it helps somebody out there. And remember, he's listening. So talk to him and listen. He'll talk back. He does. He's alive and quite well. Y'all be safe. Have a blessed evening. And remember, I love you. And if I love you, God loves you oh so much more.